Hi guys, it's David from Automotive Press. You probably know that I love Toyota Tacomas. In fact, I've owned a 2017, a 2018, 2019, and even a 2021, all the way from TRD Sport to TRD Pros, and I had them for many years. And you know what? I have a real attachment to Toyota Tacoma. So you know how much I love the brand and the model, but also there has been so much controversy in terms of what happened to the new Tacoma, just because it went from V6 to 2.4 liter turbocharged engine, which is a 4-cylinder, and also it's gone through so many changes, some good and maybe some not so good. So I'm going to give you a very fair, unbiased opinion on what I like and what I'm not too crazy about, particularly to do with this Trailhunter version, which is now the flagship. So let me give you 5 things I like and 5 things I'm not too crazy about the new Toyota Tacoma Trailhunter. Let's go. Welcome back. So as you probably already know, the Toyota Tacoma has gone through major transformation and it is available in many different trims, just like before, including the SR5, the TRD Sport, TRD Off-Road, which is my favorite in terms of value for money. Then you can move up to Limited, which provides all-wheel drive. And of course, you can get the legendary TRD Pro and the version I'm driving this week, which is the Trailhunter version. So many different trims are available, and you can get them in either 2.4 turbo or 2.4 turbo with hybrid. But let me get back to the Trailhunter, which is what I want to focus on today. So the first thing I really like about the Trailhunter version of the Tacoma compared to, let's say, TRD Pro, is that this is a true dedicated overlanding version of the Tacoma. It's the first time we have a Trailhunter, and you can tell that there are so many things about it that makes this an ideal off-roading vehicle. I mean, in fact, this is the version I will buy if I'm looking for Tacoma, because you know that I like off-roading a lot. And that includes everything from the rigid fog lamps right here, which of course is also in the TRD Pro. But as you move to the side, you begin to see the changes. Now this particular model has the winter tires right now, so it doesn't have the standard off-road tires, but normally it would come with a proper off-road tires to go with these bronze wheels, which looks really cool. This one is the iForce Max. It's the only version available in terms of the Trailhunter. But you got a pretty serious roof rack right here, very similar to what I have on my first edition Land Cruiser. And as you move toward the back, you get more stuff such as components from ARB. So you got a really cool looking one right here. And many other overlanding gears are available as options as well. But you even get a light over here on the side, which I found to be useful at night. You get true rock rails right here, not running boards, so you can actually drive this over rocks, and if it hits, you won't damage your truck. And as you move to the back, you get more things. You get some proper recovery hooks or tow hooks right here in the back, nice and big. It's also ARB. And this one has the old AMU suspension, which I'll talk about in a second. So it's got the proper looks and feel for an overlanding system. And that's what I really like about the Trailhunter, especially when compared to TRD Pro, which still looks good, but this one I think looks better. And of course, the second thing I really like is the suspension system, which is different from a TRD Pro. The TRD Pro has Fox suspension, which is what they've had for many years, of course, with revision as the model changes. But this one has the old AMU suspension, as you can see. So it is much more geared towards slow off-roading, serious rock climbing and mountain climbing compared to TRD Pro. I think the two actually feel quite different. I talked about that with other YouTubers as well, in the sense that Trailhunter is really good for going over some rocks and be able to take some serious off-roading courses, whereas the TRD Pro designed for kind of high-speed desert running, which is a little bit of a different background. As well, I already mentioned about the tires that's dedicated for off-roading, and I forgot to mention a little bit earlier in my point number 1, but this one has what's commonly called a snorkel, which is actually an intake. So instead of taking the air in from the front, it takes the air in from here. So that will allow clean air to enter the compartment right here, allowing the engine to kind of breathe, and therefore this is ideal for dusty places and even for kind of driving through river and so forth where water might enter the engine compartment. So that's actually very helpful. This is not available on the TRD Pro, so very important part of this. So you got lots of really cool suspension pieces and even some other off-road equipment, as I mentioned in point number 1. So those are some of the things I really like so far. And of course, don't forget that this one, like the TRD Pro, has stabilizer disconnect, which means I can disconnect the front stabilizer bar, and that will allow for a complete articulation of these wheels, and they can move up and down like crazy. And I've tried a couple of times, and it's pretty impressive. because it will allow you to really go up some big rocks and so forth, something that you could not do before with the old Tacoma. So I just opened the hood here for the Tacoma Trailhunter. But the third point I want to point out is a controversial one, because it is the 2.4 liter turbocharged hybrid engine called the iForce Max for Trailhunter, as well as TRD Pro and some other Tacoma models if you decide to go for the iForce Max. And of course, I really liked the old naturally aspirated 3.5 liter V6 engine. That was not very powerful, but really smooth and actually pretty quiet, and it went well with the character of the Tacoma. So most of us are not super happy that V6 is not available anymore, and we've kind of downgraded to 2.4 Turbo 4 in terms of displacement. But the feel of this engine is actually surprisingly good. In fact, I like it better in this application way more than in my Land Cruiser, which has exact same engine, same power output, same torque, but it feels a little bit unnatural and unbalanced in my Land Cruiser, because when you step on the gas, it kind of takes off and then it slows down and so forth. But in the Tacoma Trailhunter, it feels very natural. It almost feels like a small V6 engine, and they calibrated the noise, the feel, the acceleration to the point where that you might not really notice that it's a turbocharged hybrid engine with lots of complications behind the scenes. I think it actually feels pretty natural, and of course tremendous power and tremendous torque, all happening at very low RPM. So the performance of the engine is way better than before. You don't have to worry about kind of gutless feel that we had in the Tacoma, because that one kind of really struggled to go up hills and to accelerate fast. But this one takes off with a real energy and a real passion. So even though many of us maybe not too crazy about going from naturally aspirated engine to a complicated turbo hybrid, in terms of performance, in terms of feel on the road, this 2.4 turbo hybrid is actually really good and better than the way it is designed for my Land Cruiser. So what else do I like about the Trailhunter? Well, this one has this beautiful bronze oxide color, but aside from that, I like the exterior design quite a bit. I like it better than the TRD Pro, because it just looks more integrated. Everything from the front bumper integration to the snorkel to the roof rack, and of course the rock sliders, and then we have this ARB right here. So as I pointed out earlier, the whole thing looks like a beautiful package. The bronze wheels look really good with the bronze oxide paint. And this is definitely the combination that I will buy, as I mentioned, not just because it looks good, but this is the version I want to buy because I want to go off-roading with it. And then especially compared to the new 4Runner, which is all new for 2025, they've done a great job of the design. It doesn't matter which way you look at it, far or close, left or right, it just looks really, really amazingly good. Compared to the 4Runner, which has kind of like a mustache design right here, this part is prominent, and it doesn't look right to me. The new 4Runner, I think, is trying too hard to be like a Tacoma at the same time as the old 4Runner, and to me it doesn't look quite right. But they've done a great job with the new Tacoma, front or back, side or inside as well. In fact, let me show you the interior right now. So this is the interior of the Trailhunter, which I think is the best looking one among all the different Tacoma versions. Big 14-inch screens, grippy handle right here, and then unfortunately we do have a A-pillar grip on that side, but not on this side. But still, the design looks fantastic, really quite practical, at least in the front, and it's got rugged look with kind of stone type finish right here, and all the features work really well. So the interior design is beautiful. The seats are much better than before. This also goes up higher than it used to be. So the front area is great, not so much about the rear space, but I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So there are many things I like about the Trailhunter, but the fifth one is the fact that this is still a very practical truck. I mean, for example, I can just push this button and open the tailgate, which we didn't have before. I can actually just tap it from the bottom and you'll close. That's a nice feature that's at least on this Trailhunter and available on some other models. Also, if you buy the Limited, you can get all-wheel drive available, which wasn't offered in previous Tacomas. So lots of practical things. With the Trailhunter, you can get either a 6-foot or a 5-foot bed in the US, but here in Canada, it only comes in a 6-foot bed. The TRD Pro is only 5-foot bed. But either way, I can actually get overlanding gear and a huge rear pickup bed area, which wasn't possible before, mainly because we didn't have a Trailhunter, but even with the TRD Pro, we couldn't get a long bed previously. So I think it makes it very practical. Again, I do have a problem with the rear seating area, which will come up in the 5 things I'm not too crazy about. But overall, it is still a very practical truck, and there are many reasons why I would buy this over some other trucks. Now let me talk about 5 things I'm not too crazy about on this new Tacoma Trailhunter. So what about things I'm not too crazy about in terms of this Trailhunter? Well, the first thing is the obvious one, and that is the fact that this is so expensive now. The TRD Pros are also very expensive, but here in Canada, the Trailhunter is even more expensive than TRD Pro, hitting in the $80,000 range. So with taxes and everything, it's going to be close to $100,000 in Canada, and that is absolutely a crazy amount of money to pay for a Tacoma pickup truck. So even though it has so much more features than before, even a removable JBL speakers and so forth, it is still just way too much money, I think. Now the TRD Pros are a little bit cheaper than Trailhunter here in Canada, but in the US it's more or less the same price, and that one has different kind of features, including the isodynamic seats and so forth, but it is still too expensive. I think when you move down to TRD Off-Road and TRD Sport, the prices are more reasonable, but it is still a big jump over the previous generation Tacomas. So I was really hoping that Toyota would just give us a simpler versions of the Tacoma and keep the price low, because we're not looking for all these gadgets and features. We just want an affordable Tacoma, which was the original recipe of the Tacoma that made it so successful, because it was affordable, and now it's not so affordable. So that's the first thing I'm not too crazy about. The second thing I'm not too crazy about is this snorkel or intake system, which is really cool, and I love it on the Trailhunter. But what they try to do is piping some of the sound from the engine compartment through the snorkel system. So it has turbo intake sound coming right through here, and then you can hear it on the passenger side. With the window closed, it's not so bad, but when you open the window, you can really hear that whistling sound, which I'll show in a second. And honestly, it's kind of fun and cool in the beginning, as many YouTubers have pointed out, but as you get used to it, it just becomes annoying. I don't think that was necessary, and you know what? That's one thing I don't like. Okay, so let me take you for a quick drive, and I can show you what I mean by the fact that the intake turbo sound that's piped in through the snorkel is cool in the beginning, but not so much when you keep on driving, because it kind of gets annoying. Let me show you. So as you can tell, every time I step on the gas, it makes a sound, and every time I let the gas go, it makes even louder sound. And if you have to drive this truck in the summertime with the window down, it's going to really annoy the passenger side. So I hope there was a way to turn it off, but there isn't, because it's a mechanical sound you're hearing, but honestly, it's not a very good sound. The third thing I want to point out is the fact that the quality is not bad, acceptable, and maybe in some areas better than before, but I still think it's not quite up to my standard anyway, because the gaps are not bad. Like, it's only about 3 millimeters there, but it gets wider over here at almost 4 millimeters, and you can tell it doesn't quite line up here in the front. You can tell it's off right here. And then the doors are fine, but they did something really weird. Like, this is, for example, 4.5 millimeter, but the gasket run through here and then it gets cut off. Now that's by design. Same thing over here. It goes all the way, but there's a little bit of a gap here. That's by design, it's not a defect. And they might have done this to allow waters to kind of move through, or maybe for aerodynamic reasons, but it looks strange because it looks like something is missing here. And then also there was just a little bit of squeaks and rattles when I was driving, not too much and not too noticeable, but I feel like maybe this is an early production and it's not quite the perfect Tacoma I was looking for. Granted, even the previous generation has some issues because I've owned so many of them. It is still built in Mexico, and nothing against the factories in Mexico because they do produce good product. But I feel like maybe they rushed through the Tacoma a little bit, and there's a few things that is not quite right. And the interior plastics, for example, looks okay, but it looks a bit cheap. Again, lots of hard plastic, and you can see it's a little bit rattly. So maybe in a year or so they can improve the overall quality and maybe even change out some of the material so it's not so hard. But the design is functional, but it looks a little bit cheap, and so I'm not super crazy about the overall quality. So the fourth point brings me back to the engine compartment. As I mentioned, I love the output, the torque, the feel of the engine on the road. I think is much better than the way it is designed for a Land Cruiser. But I still miss the naturally aspirated, simple engine that the Tacoma had. I wish they offered both the V6 and the Turbo 4. That would have been ideal. But now everything is turbocharged engine, either with or without hybrid. And as you can tell, it's a pretty complicated system. So I'm not 100% sure about long-term reliability. I'm confident that it's going to stay reliable because 99% of Toyota products are always reliable, even when the new models introduced. But the last few years has been a bit of a challenge for Toyota, as you know, with some recalls and so forth. That was surprising. And so I can't say for sure 5, 10, maybe even 15 years down the road whether this engine will remain as bulletproof as the old naturally aspirated engine. So that would be my fourth complaint, is that I really did wish that the Toyota either kept the V6 or offered a V6 engine as an option, because many of its competitors are still offering V6 engine. Anyhow, but because I like the performance of this engine, I'm going to let this one go for now and then wait a few years and hopefully it remains reliable. The fifth and last point I want to talk about is the fact that while the Tacoma is practical in general, I don't know why, but they didn't make the rear seat more practical. Nothing wrong with the rear seat in terms of overall design, but it is still pretty tight. And even though I'm not tall, I'm 5'8", with my seats in the front set up that way, you can tell there's very little space for the back. Even worse for the TRD Pro, which has the isodynamic seats in the back that take up even more space. So definitely Trailhunter is better from that perspective, but even then you can tell the legroom is limited, the headrooms are okay, and these seats are actually quite vertical. So as you can tell, I'm not super happy about the design that they decided to go with, because they could have easily made this compartment a little bit bigger, compromise maybe the rear pickup bed, or make the truck just a little bit bigger. I know they're trying to make it compact so that it still fits in people's garage, but still, what is the point of buying a mid-size truck with this amount of legroom, because it's not going to be comfortable in the back. So I wish that they made it a little bit roomier, but this is something that we just have to live with. So at the end of the day, what do I think of the Tacoma Trailhunter? Well, I've already done a number of reviews on other Tacoma models, so go ahead and take a look at that. But in terms of Trailhunter, I will admit that this is a version I like the most among all the Tacoma models. It's also the most expensive, also the most capable in terms of off-roading. So it has lots of good things and maybe some stuff that is not perfect yet. But given the choice, would I buy the all-new Tacoma or the old version? I would still pick the new version because it's got more power and torque, more pep, better acceleration, and overall more safety features, and just feels better on the road. And assuming that the reliability will stay really solid for many years to come, this is the obvious choice even when compared to the beloved previous generation Tacoma. But the Trailhunter is still very expensive along with the TRD Pro, and there are a number of compromises, so only you can decide what's right for you and whether the Tacoma Trailhunter is the model you should pick. But personally for me, if I were to buy a Tacoma again, Trailhunter is the obvious choice. I hope this was helpful for you, and if you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up, make some comments, ask questions, and if you haven't done so yet, would you kindly subscribe as well. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.